Today we're discussing Parsha Lech Lecha. I would say this is not just a Torah Parsha. It's basically, if you go deeper into that Parsha, you will discover that this Parsha is, this portion of the Torah, is like a lifetime plan. So first let's start from the content, what this Parsha is all about. God speaks to Abraham, commanding him, go from your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house, to the land which I will show you. There God says, you will be made into a great nation. Abraham and his wife Sarai, accompanied by Abraham's nephew Lot, journey to the land of Canaan, where Abraham builds an altar and continues to spread the message of one God. However, a famine forces them to depart for Egypt, where beautiful Sarai is taken to Pharaoh's palace. Abraham escapes death because they present themselves as brother and sister. Otherwise, the Egyptians were very simply, beautiful woman, we can kill the husband and we will take the wife. That's it. Their simple mentality. But, so they presented themselves as brother and sister, as I said, and a plague prevents the Egyptian king from touching her. And it convinces him to return her back to Abraham. And to compensate the so-called brother revealed now as a husband, with gold and silver and cattle and just to keep everything okay, sort of okay. Back in the land of Canaan, Lot separates from Abraham and settles in the evil city of Sodom, which later on was destroyed, where he falls captive he becomes a captive by the mighty 4 kings, which conquered the 5 kings, the 5 cities of Sodom and Gomorrah in Sodom Valley. Abraham is informed about it, that his nephew has been captured and taken as a slave, enslaved. So Abraham sets out with a small band to rescue his nephew. And of course, with God's help, he defeats the 4 kings, and then he is blessed by Melchizedek, the king of Salem, which is Jerusalem. This is the ancient city of Salem, that's the way it was called, which later on became Jerusalem. In those days, whenever you had to sign a covenant, an agreement, and if it was a serious agreement, the tradition was that you kill an animal, cut it in 2 halves, and the people who sealed the agreement, the covenant, must pass together between those 2 halves of an animal. So God seals the covenant between the parts, which is what it's called, with Abram, in which he foretells Abraham, at this stage still Abraham, about the future for forthcoming exile, persecution, and of the people of Israel. He basically promises Abraham that his descendants will be given the Holy Land as their eternal heritage. Abraham and Sarai, after 10 years of marriage, still childless. And Sarai tells Abraham to marry her maidservant Hagar, who is actually an Egyptian princess, which was given to Abraham as part of the compensation for kidnapping and trying to enslave Sarai. And Hagar, the princess, was given as a slave to the household of Abraham, and she became the servant of Sarai. Hagar conceives and becomes disrespectful towards her mistress. And then she flees from Sarai when Sarai basically tells her off and treats her a little bit harshly. However, an angel convinces Hagar to return back and tells her that her son will be the father of a populous nation. And when Ishmael is born, Abraham was 86 years old. So 13 years later, God changes Abraham's name to Abraham, which is father of the multitudes, and Sarai's name to Sarah, princess, and promises that a son will be born from them, from this child whom they should call Isaac. And Hashem, God tells them that a great nation will come out from Isaac, which God will establish his special bond with this nation. Abraham is commanded to circumcise himself and his descendants as a sign of the covenant between God and him. Abraham immediately complies and circumcises himself as well as all males of his household. That's basically the whole parsha. First of all, it's very interesting. The parsha starts simply from the words which Hashem is telling Abraham. But who is Abraham? The Torah doesn't tell us. It's not like in Noah in the previous parsha. Torah at least tells us that Noah was a decent person, a saintly person, and was a tzaddik, and he was, all people were deep down in sin, and he was the only one. Here, not a word. And that in itself is very peculiar. However, later on we find out that the oral Torah in the Talmud and Mishnah, we know the whole story of Abraham and how he became what he became. But the reason why it's not explained in the actual Torah is very interesting, and I'm not going to talk about it. I will keep you a little bit sort of guessing about it, unless you will find out yourself. However, later on, in later parshas, I will probably tell you why Torah explicitly is not explaining who actually Abraham is and how he became what he is. So let's start from this. Why I said on the beginning that this parsha is like a life plan. Hashem starts from saying to Abraham, go from your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house to the land which I will show you. From your land, or from your will. The word land, eretz, in Hebrew, is related to the word ratzon, will. So what basically Hashem is telling Abraham is change your will, change your perception of things. This is what this is all about. Go from your birthplace, which the deep meaning is go from your emotional and behavioral self, which is the product of person's environment, where you interact with people, where you grow up, you pick up the environment. And the last statement Hashem makes, go from your father's house, which is the intellect. Because in Kabbalah terminology, the intellect is referred to as father within man, since the father is the source of the authority over his feelings and behavioral patterns. So, what the parsha is all about is the work each one of us has to do during his or her lifetime. In Hebrew called derech eretz, through road. Working on our character, our traits, our personality, in order to fulfill the reason why our souls, in Hebrew neshamas, were sent to this physical world called Malchut in Kabbalah. It is easy to say, hard to do. But let's look into what is it the work on yourself really means, what it's all about. What these words which Hashem is telling Abraham at the very beginning of the Parsha, what they really entail, what is he asking Abraham to do? Learning to feel your soul like the other distinctive achievements of the spirit, like art, literature, music, poetry, it needs training, it needs discipline, apprenticeship, and the most demanding routines and the most painstaking attention to detail. No one can compose a great novel or a symphony without years of preparation, learning, and training. This is why most theories of human behavior are simply false. They don't know. You cannot theorize about human behavior by simply making one or two aspects of the human behavioral pattern and say that this is it. They claim that we are either free or not. Either we have choice of our behavior or not. Freedom is not either or. Freedom is a process. It begins with dependence. In human history, even slavery is the beginning of that process. And slow, during human history, develops into freedom through human understanding. It is what Torah teaches us in short, a journey. It's Abraham's journey. To give you another simple example, when the baby is born, it's totally dependent on its parents and grandparents. And from that dependence grows future freedom of the baby, through the parents and grandparents sharing their care and their love with the baby and teaching the baby how to become an adult man. Exactly the same process. So the deep meaning of the words Lech Lecha, which are normally translated as go, live, travel, what they really mean is journey, Lech, to yourself, Lecha. Leave behind all external influences, which turn us into victims normally of circumstances beyond our control, and travel inward to the self, to yourself inside, to your neshamas, to your souls. It is here, only there inside you, that the freedom is born, practiced, and sustained. Abraham's entire life was governed by the inner voice, the voice of God. But this was only step one. He had the courage. That was the major difference of Abraham comparing to anybody else. Do you realize that Shem and Eber, the son of Noah, and his grandson Eber, at that time when Abraham was alive and the time what we are talking about, they had a yeshiva. They had a yeshiva in somewhere in Himalayas, in Nepal, where Nepal now is, right? And they were preaching and teaching Torah. However, the difference was, right, and nobody pursued them, nobody was talking about, only few people knew, and those who knew, who were interested, were going to that yeshiva to study. But these people were only deep inside themselves. They were not sharing their knowledge, their learning with the multitudes of population. However, Abraham did. He had the courage to be on one side while all the rest of the world was on the other side. His mission, it was the world which was absolutely convinced that idolatry, the belief in multiple gods, is the way to go, and this is what the society is all. And Nimrod's dictatorship was the whole world. Abraham's mission was, as we read in the next parsha, to instruct his children and his household and all his descendants after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and what is just, so that they would carry with them the inner voice whenever they went and wherever they went. Hence the high level of importance of education in Judaism, since Jews would have to hold their values even when they are a minority in different cultures whose values would be totally different from opposite actually to the values of Judaism, our own values. Jewish identity is that inner voice, learned in the childhood, reinforced by lifelong study, rehearsed daily in ritual, in prayer. That is what gives us a sense of direction in life. Even those of you who say that they don't believe in God still call themselves Jews. Why? They don't call themselves English, French, Russian, German. They call themselves Jews, even though they claiming they don't believe in God. I invite all of those people to ask themselves and try to find an honest answer just for yourself. It gives us the confidence of knowing that Judaism, virtually alone among the cultures and civilizations of its day, has survived, while the rest have become part of history. Torah is what allows us to avoid the false turns and temptations of the present, while submitting ourselves to its genuine beliefs and blessings. I would like to finish with a quote, with words I found in a book which was given to me by my daughter. And the book is called Einstein and the Rabbi, written by Rabbi Naomi Levy, a conservative rabbi in Los Angeles, USA. And this is what she says in the end of one of her chapters. May you meet the soul inside you. May you welcome its timeless teachings, and may you open your eyes to the world it sees and knows, a oneness that encompasses us all. Amen. I will see you in the next parsha. Goodbye.